Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Football Chemist, where we use data to analyse key footballing moments without boring or confusing you with any of those big numbers. In today's video, we'll be looking at England's left-back crisis, which is a big talking point ahead of Thomas Tuchel's arrival in 2025. It's been a position that England has struggled to fill, especially at the Euros this year, when they're playing people out of position, and they've got a few options right now. But let's take a deeper look at who could be playing at left-back for England under Thomas Tuchel. Just to start off with, I'd like to clarify that there are a few options that I will not be considering in this video. The first one is Luke Shaw. When he's fully fit, he is undoubtedly a great choice for left-back for England. He is too injury-prone at the moment to seriously consider. So when Tuchel's looking at his squad in the next 2 years, he's going to be looking for more reliable players who will be fit. But if Shaw is fit and gets consistent minutes under his belt, then he can really put his name forward to be in that squad in 2026. Another option that I won't be looking at is Ben Chilwell, because Ben Chilwell is not part of Enzo Maresca's plans at Chelsea right now. He's not playing for Chelsea, he's not playing Premier League football, and it's unlikely that he'll be playing Premier League football anytime soon. Furthermore, when he was playing Premier League football last season, his performances were quite underwhelming, so he's not in the frame to be left back for England. Thirdly, I'd like to consider Joe Gomez, who did an excellent job at left back for Liverpool last season, got into the squad for Euro 2024, but Southgate didn't want to play him out of position at left back, as Gomez is primarily a centre back. So whilst Gomez I think could be a good choice, he's better off in the future being a centre back for England, and so that's why I won't be considering him in this video. Fourthly, you've got Levi Colwill, as a very similar issue for him. He's a left-sided centre back, he can play left back. He's better off as a centre-back. He can be part of England's plans as a centre-back, and that's why I think Thomas Tuchel should stick with playing Colwill at centre-back. Finally, you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who Carsley did trial at left-back during the international break back in September, but for me, Trent is so good that he should be playing in his best position. That's where his creative outlet is most important, so Trent is a right-back, play him at right-back. So the first name I'll be considering is a player who won't be too familiar to Premier League fans, at least not recently, will be more familiar to EFL fans, and that is Ipswich Town's Leif Davis. He's new on the scene, and like I said, he's been starring in the EFL, both in League One and in the Championship in the last 2 seasons. He is your classic attacking left back. He has got 32 league assists in his previous 2 seasons, and despite Ipswich's underwhelming performance this season, which was to be expected as a newly promoted team, he really has been one of the standout players. He does provide a huge attacking threat, and he gets forward, he gets to the byline, he puts in crosses, and that's how he gets assists. And furthermore, he rarely makes mistakes. He has not made an error in the last 2 seasons, according to FBref. And when you're playing at the top level, such as England, when you're dominating possession as a defender, you cannot afford to make errors, because that is when opposition teams get in and attack you on the counter. However, on the other side, he is inexperienced at the top level. And right now, England will need players with more experience. He's only had a third of a season in the Premier League, and even there, he's playing for Ipswich, a side towards the bottom who don't see much of the ball. So he'd have to come into the England squad and adapt to a completely new style of play. Perhaps one for the future, but it might just be a bit too soon for him now. Our next option is Newcastle's Lewis Hall. And as someone who's had to write predicted lineups for Newcastle for a few months now, I am all too familiar with Eddie Howe and Lewis Hall's relationship, but for now it does look like he is starting for Newcastle, and not only is he starting, but he's doing a very good job. Remember that performance against Arsenal when he kept Bukayo Saka under wraps in their 1-0 win? That is what we can expect from Hall, and he is still only 20 years old, so he's still got so much time ahead of him to grow. Hall's game has really been based on being a progressive player, a progressive passer, and he's done this really well for Newcastle, whether he's had Anthony Gordon or Harvey Barnes on that left flank. Incidentally, those are 2 options that England could be considering at left wing, so if one of them does get into the England team, that's even further reason to put Hall in, as he will have that chemistry with Barnes or with Gordon, most likely Gordon, in the England setup. On top of this, he is an outstanding blocker. He is in the 99th percentile for blocks in the last year amongst other left backs, so he is one of the best around in terms of blocks. As for progressive passing, he's in the 92nd percentile, so he is up there in the top 10% of left backs for your progressive play, and this is also seen in his pass completion statistics, where he is also in the top 10%. And this is why Hall really is a modern day left back who can thrive at a big team. Not only does he have the defensive capabilities, but he will drive you forward, he will play the passes forward, and we know England have got so much quality in attack, and a player like Hall can really help England capitalise on that. However, it's not all positives for Hall. He's not one of those left backs who's going to be driving into the penalty area and really attacking the goal himself. He's more likely to be playing the passes. But this might not be a bad thing for England, given the amount of quality they've got in attack. Do they really need another player in the penalty area? Perhaps, perhaps not. Furthermore, his assist numbers could be better. Compared to the other options that England have at their disposal, he's not going to be getting the most assists. Again, is this much of a problem? We'll see, because England have got so many creative players, so many players who can provide assists, that maybe a more regulation left back who starts the passages to play a bit further back could be what England need a little bit more. Next, we move on to Rico Lewis. And Rico Lewis was the player who played at left back most recently for England under Lee Carsley. He knows how to play in a big team. I mean, he's been playing under Pep Guardiola, so he will know how to play in a team where you expect them to win trophies and you expect them to go far in tournaments. And despite his age, just like Hall, he is very mature and he can adapt and change his game to fit at left back. The obvious downside with Lewis, though, is that he's been playing most of his club football at right back. Furthermore, he's not actually been on the scene for very long. This is only his second season playing in the Premier League, so he is still quite raw. And while he does demonstrate great maturity for a player of his age, Thomas Tuchel might need to be a bit careful with managing his expectations and his workload with a player like Lewis. On the flip side, though, England's next tournament is in 2026, in 18 months' time. A lot can change between now and then, and so Lewis has got plenty of time to grow and get into this role. But for me, the big sticking point with Lewis is the fact that he's not a left back. He's right-footed, which will impact his ability to play forward. And given how much tinkering England have done recently, it might just be wise to play a regulation left back at left back. Lewis could be trialled at right back, he could be trialled in midfield. He's got many good positions he can play in, which brings me to my other point about Lewis. When Lewis plays at fullback for Man City, he tends to invert, kind of like what Trent Alexander-Arnold did under Klopp at Liverpool. And if you were to do this at England, you're going to have another player who plays centrally and doesn't like to get out wide, and this could add further problems. We've already seen how this is a problem with their attack when they try to get players like Cole Palmer and Phil Foden into their team, players who naturally like to cut in, who naturally like to operate around the area and in that kind of central channels. But if you're to add Lewis into the mix, then you really are starting to lack some width, especially if Alexander-Arnold's playing on the right back, and if he inverts, then England are really running out of wide players, because it might just end up that your only wide player is Bukayo Saka, a naturally left-footed player on the right who will also be cutting in. One of the oldest options on my list is Tyrick Mitchell, who is Premier League proven. He's been doing it for Crystal Palace for years, and if it wasn't for Palace's start to the season, I reckon he would have been in one of the England squads so far. But unfortunately for him, a so-so start to the season has meant that he has fallen by the wayside a bit in England's plans, but that can all change with a new manager. Furthermore, Palace's form is unlikely to last this long. They shouldn't be in a relegation fight. I'd be surprised if they are there around May, so that might help Tyrick Mitchell get back into the frame. As for his style of play, just like Hall, he is one of the best blockers around, but he's also one of the best tacklers around. And that is what can really convince Tuchel to bring him in. He's another regulation left back. In a team full of star-studded players, sometimes you do just need the regulation players to do the boring jobs, to really do the grunt work and carry the team whilst everyone else makes the headlines. However, one big downside for Mitchell is that he has been playing in a Palace team that has rarely dominated the ball. In the last few years, they have been below average in the Premier League in terms of average possession. They've always been hovering around that 42, 43, 44, 45 mark. Whereas if you're in an England team, you're going to be dominating the ball. You're going to be up there with the possession. So this would be something that he would have to adapt to. And the final option, which is a controversial one, is Bukayo Saka. I don't really need to give Saka an introduction. I'm sure you all know who Saka is, what he can do, and why he is such a good player. But what I do need to justify is why I'm considering him at left back. Saka played one season at left back pretty much, and that was the 2019-20 season, back when he was a much younger player. It's still hard to believe that he's only 23, by the way. He knows how to play for a top team. He knows how to play for a possession-based team. He's played at the top for years. This is what he's good at. And whilst he said that he doesn't really want to play at left back, he was trialled as a wing back in Euro 2024 when Gareth Southgate was trying to change the system around, although he did play on the right. However, as a naturally left-footed player, if you're going to play him at a wing-back or as a full-back, he's surely got to be playing on the left. So let's compare the 5 of them together. As you can see here, I've highlighted various stats that show both their possession stats and their defensive stats, and which player does best at both. Hall is the one that comes to mind immediately because he's got lots of pros and cons, but they have all got their own case for why they should be England's #1 left back. It will be up to Tuchel to decide what he wants, and this will also be affected by the formation that he plays. So let's take a closer look at the formation. So as you can see here, this is how England have tended to set up under Lee Carsley. They've gone for a 4-2-3-1, and I've got our left back options down here. So if he was to go with someone, say like Leif Davis, you'll see him jumping in here, and it could be Palmer here, it could be Gordon, but if it's Palmer, we could see him cutting in, and then Davis can then come onto the byline and really put the crosses in to show his attacking output and his ability to get assists. It would be a similar thing if we had Lewis Hall in. He too likes to go down and get down the pitch. It could be even more helpful if we take Palmer out and we put someone like Gordon in, and these two work well together. Gordon can either cut in or he can stay wide, use his chemistry with Hall to make a real impact in the England team. The third option would be Rico Lewis, and this is where things can get a bit tricky because Lewis tends to like to invert into midfield and everyone then moves around in defence. But the problem is you're going to then have Alexander-Arnold doing this, and that does not play to his strength. So it's just very hard to see Lewis and Alexander-Arnold working together in a back four. If you were to put Lewis in a system like this, surely he would go on the right and Trent would drop to the bench. Then if you have Tyrick Mitchell in, you'll see a much more conventional left back. He might be staying back more, but this could also help because then you could get Alexander-Arnold going up. And if Alexander-Arnold goes up, it gives Saka the license to cut in a bit more. We know Saka likes to get in, cut inside and really drive into the penalty area like this. So this could actually play quite well to his strengths. And then Alexander-Arnold operates the wide position here, and he can then put in his trademark crosses to provide an attacking threat for England. But then the fifth option, and it's going to take a bit of rejigging, is if we take Saka here, move into left back, shift the defenders across, we can bring a centre back like Colwill in, and then this also gives the freedom to drop Bellingham back, and then we can bring in a narrow front three where we can get both Palmer and Foden into our England team. And this is something that fans were crying out for England to do, to get this quality in the team. Some liked it, some said just play players in your position, but the reason why I like this system is because you've got Saka as a wing back, but he will not be restricted. He can still get far up the pitch because then you can see the defender shifting back, and instead Trent is now dropping into a back four. Plus you've got Rice who can anchor the midfield, which gives Bellingham the freedom to get a bit further forward, and then Palmer and Foden can just stay nice and narrow and play with Harry Kane up front, or whoever is starting this in this front three. You could have Gordon here, you could have anyone you want here. It could change a lot. So there you have it. What do you think? Personally, I think England's best option for now is Lewis Hall. But like I said, 2026 is 18 months away, so there's so many other options that they consider. Please let me know in the comments what you think England should be doing and what Thomas Tuchel's big plan will be when he comes in to manage them in 2025. I'll see you in the next video.